Merry Christmas, everybody. We're going to be talking about something a bit more lighthearted today. Just kidding. We're going to be talking about one of the biggest psyops ever pulled, and with it, the fact of how this impacted so many different people's lives, the liars in the corporate press that were consistently disseminating the top-down talking points to you so that they could tell you what was best because we had to do what was best for everybody because we had to do what was for the greater good. Something you have to realize, every single time you hear people using the language of the greater good, you are in the grip of totalitarians and should act as such. These people are nothing more than Machiavellian tricksters of the highest orders, and with it, none of them can be trusted. They've proven the fact that every single one of them is nothing more than a talking head for Big Pharma, the regime, or any single talking point that needs to be thrown out there from any other monomegalithic institution that can be something that can exert the factors of control over society. No. Don't you worry. You just need to go ahead and listen to them and do everything they say because certainly they know everything and they've never been wrong. They were never wrong about WMDs in Iraq. That didn't cost 1.4 million people. They didn't have preemptive information that could have helped them counter 9/11. No, none of that. They would never actually have any of this information ahead of time. We would never fund things like gain-of-function research that would end up leading to things like the creation of something like SARS-CoV-2, which would then end up leading to it escaping and then affecting the world. That's just ridiculous. That's conspiracy theories, and obviously none of that would ever be true. Let's go ahead and jump into this video. We'll be jumping into this tweet from Dave Smith here in just a moment, but before we do, I just have to get something off my chest. It's like, I despise these people so much, and it's hard to put to words, and it's certainly hard to do so in a way that YouTube will allow me. I cannot get over the fact of all of the lies that were consistently disseminated over the last 3 years, and with it, they still sit there and act like they are ever so noble as they ride on their high horse to stand on their ivory tower, as they wag their finger at you to act like you were the bad person because you wouldn't acquiesce to the demands of the pharmaceutical industrial lobby. What are these people responsible for? Well, they're responsible for destroying children's lives, whether it's pulling them out of school, destroying their education, or destroying childhood development at a young age because everyone was forced to wear masks, and with it, children very much emulate what other people are doing and copy their parents' faces and copy other people. That is why children operate very much like their parents do as they grow, because they are very much people who copy us, and because of the fact that they cannot copy our facial structures, they are going to have childhood development be stunted for years to come. Do you think the people in power care about that? Do you think the media class cares about that? Those who are responsible for telling these lies over and over again, no, they don't give a shit about that. They'll just sit there, sidestep it, and then go on to tell you that you're inessential, that your family is inessential, that putting food in front of your child on the table so they can not go hungry is inessential. And anyone willing to say something like this is a demon, and there is no other word you can use to convey the nature of what they are in civil society. They are a demon. The fact that you would sit there and act like you were ever so noble as you told people they couldn't hold the hands of those they loved most, as they sat there and cried through the glass, as their vision blurred not only from the tears but the breath that they hyperventilated onto the glass they were looking through, as they watched the beeper tick down and they couldn't hold the hands of those they loved most as they died and drew their last breath. You fucking monsters would gladly sit there and then act like you were the noble ones in civil society. You are gremlins and should be treated as such. Now we're going to go ahead and jump into this tweet from Dave Smith. Never forget how every powerful person in this country became tyrannical big pharma salesmen at the drop of a dime. Never forget, and I guarantee you I never will. I will never stop having a level of hatred for these people that is impossible to explain. I'm a decently well-spoken person, but with that, I still come to a loss for words when I really want to talk about how I feel about these people. Let's go ahead and throw it into this clip.
When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
You are the unvaccinated. You are the problem. It is the unvaccinated who are the problem, period, end of story.
The only people that you can blame, this isn't shaming, this is the truth. Maybe they should be shamed, are the unvaccinated.
It's time to start blaming the unvaccinated folks, not the regular folks.
Anyone you came into contact with will blame you, as will the rest of us who have done the right thing by getting vaccinated.
Because frankly, we know that we can't trust the unvaccinated.
I think it's time to get our moral house in order, Anderson. It's the unvaccinated who are the threat.
All of us vaccinated folks are going to start wearing masks to protect the unvaccinated folks. It's called a Christian value.
You're basically punishing the vaccinated for the sins of the unvaccinated.
People are not behaving honorably. The unvaccinated are basically saying, well, it's open season for me. I can do whatever I want as well.
The unvaccinated are basically beating their breasts and running around the country saying, we don't care, we're living free, and so forth.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
The unvaccinated, a group that includes children and people acting like children. And the rest of us are starting to get pissed off.
The vaccinated feel the unvaccinated are making me upset or angry.
This is not about freedom or personal choice.
Well, my freedom is being kind of disturbed here. No, screw your freedom.
The other day, Howard Stern weighed in with a much different approach. Take a look.
When are we going to stop putting up with the idiots in this country and just say, it's mandatory to get vaccinated? Their freedom.
But you're treading on our freedom and you're making other people sick, and really you're killing other people.
The anti-vaxxers, they seem to have a thing for death and home remedies.
The anti-maskers turned anti-vaxxers are not just putting their own lives at risk. If that was the issue, we could just say that we can watch them compete to win place or show in the Darwin Awards.
We have to start doing things for the greater good of society and not for idiots who think that they can do their own research.
And don't get me started on the lunatics who won't take any of the COVID vaccines.
Life is too short to be an ass. Life is way too short to be ignorant of the promise of something that is helping people worldwide.
Maybe you're doing it because you're disconnected or disorganized. Maybe you have some sympathetic psychological reasons. But maybe you're just being antisocial.
Oh, you can't shame them. You can't call them stupid. You can't call them silly. Yes, they are.
Those who are not vaccinated will end up paying the price.
The unvaccinated should be taxed. They should pay more for health care.
We need to start looking at the choice to remain unvaccinated the same as we look at driving while intoxicated.
We're going to see, and I've said, almost two types of America.
Dr. Fauci said that if hospitals get any more overcrowded, they're going to have to make some very tough choices about who gets an ICU bed. That choice doesn't seem so tough to me. Vaccinated person having a heart attack, yes, come right on in. We'll take care of you. Unvaccinated guy who gobbled horse goo, rest in peace, Wheezy.
Pointing back to the unvaccinated who are really creating a problem in this country, every death that we are seeing from COVID could have been prevented.
Literally, the only people dying are the unvaccinated. And for those of you spreading misinformation, shame on you. Shame on you. I don't know how some of you sleep at night.
How dare you? Do you have no shame? You clearly feel nothing. You heartless, soulless individual. How can you sleep at night? They will literally say things like this after lying through their teeth to toe the establishment line to propagandize people endlessly at the behest of Big Pharma, and then sit there and valorize themselves and act like they are ever so noble. Really? These people live in such a state of ego and hubris that I don't think most people can even comprehend it, because no one can really get into that mindset because you're so detached from it, because you're actually a human being that lives in reality. Well, these people live in an ivory tower, and with it, their ego and hubris is in the clouds. So what's so important about this? Well, the legacy media is crashing and burning, and with it, that means they will be falling off of their plateau quite soon. And what that's going to lead to is them falling from their ego to their IQ. And that's going to be a death blow. I can guarantee it. Now we go over here to Ivor Cummings' most important short clip of the decade, beautifully illustrating our descent into pharma weft tyranny, a must-share piece of shocking history. Evil, pure lies, pure fraud. Man, if we're going to be completely blunt, what I see is pure lies, pure fraud, and pure evil. Yeah, it is the corporate press. The people who would consistently lie about things like wars in Iraq over WMDs that could get something like, I don't know, over 1 million people killed, cause a veteran suicide epidemic at home, cause the fact that people in the United States start to have extreme economic decay because we're spending trillions of dollars abroad to go fund these black budget projects as well as our forever wars, and with it, it doesn't matter the decay that happens within the United States. Don't you understand? You have no shame. How dare you criticize this? That's just wrong of you. You need to look to us, the journalist class, the corporate press, the establishment, because we are the established nobility, and with it, we will be the ones that guide you into the future, because we are the arbiters of truth, don't you know? Now we go over here. Man, it would have been interesting if we could have had arbiters of truth being people that actually disseminated that to us throughout the entirety of what happened over the last 3 years surrounding Rona. We have this tweet from Jimmy Dore. We've been lied to about Rona on a scale our brains can't comprehend. It took me getting jab injured to look into it, and it turns out they lied about everything at every turn. Most of my Hollywood quote-unquote friends slandered and abandoned me for getting informed and sharing information, but it saved a lot of them from being poisoned by the jab. I meet them all over the country, they squeeze my hand, look me in the eye, and tell me they love me and thank me for saving them from the horrors of this poison. Which obviously, YouTube, that's just conspiracies. No one would actually ever call anything that was produced by the pharmaceutical industrial complex poison. That's just a joke. Clearly, no one would ever actually mean that. Now let's go ahead and throw it into this clip of Dr. Chris Shoemaker talking about the fact of how we actually understood how to treat SARS-CoV-2 because we learned how to counter SARS-CoV-1.
Important thing to realize is that North American science spent 15 years figuring out what to do with the next COVID. It was back 2002, 2003, the original SARS-CoV-1 occurred. And so all sorts of experiments went on to determine what would be a useful response were something similar to occur. And the research was done. Research was all done by 2015, 2016. And DARPA, D-A-R-P-A, the American research arm of the US military, it specifically knew and specifically recommended and passed the information on to the CDC that ivermectin in particular was the absolute #1 product to be used in the event of a coronavirus pandemic. It was fully known that ivermectin, and certainly hydroxychloroquine as well, were highly antiviral and immune modulatory. And those two things were the key, to modulate the immune response, plus to be antiviral as well. Those elements were both totally proven in vitro and in vivo with animals so that it was known. And of course, we knew it was completely safe for humans because these medications had been used for 35 to 40 years in humans. And so that's what was sitting there ready to be used at the next pandemic.
They knew the answer, they had the data on how to counter it, and with it, they withheld it. Why did they do that? Well, it's just like Angelus Colorum says. They kept it from the public in favor of lockdowns, masks, and gene therapies. And that's absolutely true. And here we go over here to 5 times August. I will not be playing this clip because it's so depressing and it upsets me so much and it just about moves me to tears every single time. If you would like to watch it, link in the description down below. Everything will always be linked in the description down below, so you can go check this stuff out on your own time. Check out all of my resources that I always use. So here's the thing. This video just about moves me to tears every single time, and it's because it's very personal. During what happened with the lockdowns, I had to sit there as my grandmother was ushered into an old folks' home, and I was told that I couldn't see her. As I had to stare at her through the glass, and I watched her become sadder and sadder as the days went on. What happened? Well, it was time that I lost with my grandmother that I will never get back. And I'll never forgive these monsters for stealing it. She's 94 years old. How much time do you think people that love the eldest among them have with them? How much time do they truly have with us before the Reaper takes them swiftly? And you stole that from all of us. And what do we see? We see the fact that depression has skyrocketed, and there is no better example in my mind from my personal experience than what I saw, which was my grandmother being that of the most cheerful person imaginable on the entirety of the planet to now being in the most depressive of states I have ever seen anyone hit. I will never forgive these ghouls for the fucking horrific shit that they have visited on the most innocent among us. Let's go ahead and get into this tweet because I know where I'm going to go just by getting mad, and I'm going to snowball, and this is going to get fed posting, and I'm not going to be able to post this video. 5 times August says, I never sacrificed a single hug and I'll never regret it. For many others, though, families were torn apart, locked away from one another, told they weren't allowed to be in the same room together, and were left to die alone, surrounded by strangers. These were cruel and horrific times against humanity, and we shouldn't just move on from it. We need to hold every single person who enforced these rules on society accountable and make sure it never happens again. We go over here to Health Freedom Unmuzzled. A U.S. Navy medical officer looks up the Defense Medical Epidemiology Database, DMED data for active duty military pilots and discovers a massive increase in heart conditions post-jab.
So in July, Undersecretary Cisneros acknowledged the DMED data, the database working properly, and also acknowledged things such as myocarditis rising 151%. So what I did, I went in today, I'm doing the same thing, 5-year average. However, I'm comparing it to 2022, and I only am using fixed wing pilots and helicopter pilots, active duty. So we get hypertensive disease, 36%, ischemic heart disease, 69%, pulmonary heart disease, 62%, heart failure, 973%, other forms of heart disease, 63%, cardiomyopathy, 152%.
Interesting data, huh? Yeah, I thought so as well. Here's the thing. That guy was apparently fired from his job and forced to remove all of his content from the internet. I do not know if this is actually true. Take it with a grain of salt. I saw people talking about it online, but nonetheless, it is something interesting to think about. And now we go into the COVID charts quiz from Tom Woods. Welcome to the Rona Charts quiz. In 2020, people were told that business closures, stay-at-home orders, lockdowns, and mask mandates were necessary to slow the spread. Some people were expecting that places where measures were absent or implemented half-heartedly would have drastically worse results. With more than a year of these measures behind us, it's time to evaluate the results. Preliminary academic studies have already been published and they deserve our attention. This quiz is intended for the layman, because if these radical measures were truly justified, the results should be clear and unambiguous in the data. So let's take a look. Tom does a fantastic job here in making something that's quite literally impossible to pass, because when you had so many people that were getting sick throughout the entirety of what was going on with the COOF, well, the thing is, if you were to actually register the data of what was going on with things like pre-existing comorbidities and then age, and then to account for that in correlation with the people that are getting either incredibly sick, hospitalized, or dying from the illness, you can see that the death rate actually ended up leveling out amongst basically all states, and it was basically even. Really interesting to think about. It's almost like all of government's measures weren't something that ended up stopping this, and with it was going to spread en masse like a respiratory illness does, which means that the reaction from government was wholly unnecessary, so they destroyed civil society for nothing. We go over here to the AP. Why are so many vaccinated people getting COVID-19 lately? Interesting that. Well, the thing is, the actual strain that the vaccine was created for was only for exactly that, a specific strain, and it doesn't have the capacity to evolve and develop to handle multiple different evolutions of the virus in the future. Also, it makes you a variant factory, but we'll talk about that in a different video. Another thing that's so incredibly interesting about this is that if you were to be someone who had something like natural immunity, not only was your immunity proven to be over 40 times stronger in some instances than what was provided by that of the jab, but on top of that, natural immunity is able to evolve and consistently counter different variants of a virus, because it's almost like your body has been evolving for ages to learn how to fight off illnesses so it can protect you. But no, don't you worry. You have to rely on Big Pharma for that, because that's the only person who can protect you from the big, scary, floating abstraction that you have to be worried about, because it's around every single corner. And if you're not making sure that you're paying attention at all times and you're not on guard, then it's going to get you. And if you don't take every single precaution, well, then it's certainly going to get you. And even if you do take every single precaution, then you're apparently still going to get sick. And then it's the fault of the person that didn't do the thing that you did. Even though the thing that you did was supposed to stop you from being able to contract the illness itself or spread it. But nonetheless, then you go ahead and blame the other people that didn't do the thing that you did, even though the thing that you did was sold on a lie. Anyways, we go over here, and this is from The Atlantic, and I just find this to be absolutely hilarious. Let's declare a pandemic amnesty. Let's focus on the future and fix the problems we still need to solve. By Emily Oster. How about no, Emily? How about we actually address the fact of what happened? We need Nuremberg 2.0 trials at a minimum, and amnesty is the last thing on my mind when it comes to the nature of dealing with the people responsible for destroying civil society for the last 3 years. I'm going to go ahead and call it there, because I know I'm going to end up snowballing talking about this article because it always pisses me off. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely, stay great, tell someone you love them. Peace out.